the fuck? You know what I mean? It's like, you gotta be a dad out here. You ain't got time for this, you know? So I take into account all those things, and I'm never like hurt if somebody can't do it, or you know, because I get it, you know. And I was actually talking to this chef from LA, Joe Sasto, and he, you know, I asked him over Instagram. I was like, "Hey, you want to do the podcast?" And he was like, super appreciative. He's like, "Yeah, let's fucking do it." And he's like, you know, when can you do it? And I was like, seriously, dude, if you say let's do it at 4 a.m. at my restaurant, I'll do it at 4 a.m. at your fucking restaurant. Like, I'm all in here.
Yeah.
You know, it's like cooking. You're all in.
Yeah.
If you got to get up at 4 a.m. and go get your chickens to have for service, and that's what you're fucking doing.
That's what you do. That's
you
what
know?
you do.
So I think that working in the chef field definitely gives you strength in other parts of your life, where you're like, all right, organization, fucking holding yourself accountable. So I'm definitely glad I picked this field.
But the flip side, right, is just that, like, when the pressure dials down and you're left like with yourself or with the time, and you only have that one thing to do, and not the 10 things to do, you're like, how do I just do the one thing? Can I sit with myself and focus on this one thing? And
can I not feel worthless doing less?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and which is a big struggle, especially I think now over everything that's happened over the last year.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how do we be okay with changing, adapting, doing less, stopping?
Yeah. How did you ever have any injuries in your career? Like injuries that took you out of the kitchen for a while?
When I was I think, what was I then? I don't know if I was the sous chef yet, but I think I was a lead cook at the Agora, and I got 3rd-degree burns on my hand from hot oil on a cast iron skillets. And that took me out for a couple weeks because, you know, the skin was melted off my hand, and they wouldn't let me work. It was pretty gnarly. I want to say that might be it. 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago or a year and a half ago? My appendix.
Oh my God.
Almost exploded, so that took me out for a couple weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
And then and then a few years back, I developed a cyst on my vocal cords.
Oh wow!
And I had
was that just from talking so much?
Surgery,
just from like doing
service. It was
a
combination of like fatigue and abuse of like my not sleeping enough.
Yeah,
you know, it was not sleeping enough,
burning the candle both ends.
Yeah, it was super stressful times at work. A lot of yelling and screaming and, you know, barking out orders and, you know, expoing at like really not being self-aware of what I was doing to my own voice and my own self, not sleeping, not resting, drinking highly acidic stuff all the time, coffee, you know, alcohol, high acid foods, to the point. And then also singing, right? I'm a musician as well, and then singing on top of it, and not really paying attention to how I was using my voice, and all of those things like together, just created like these cysts on my vocal cord, and I could hardly talk.
Okay,
and started off thinking it was just laryngitis. But it lasted like for months, and then there were like frequencies where no noise would come out of my mouth. Like,
and you were talking, you thought you were talking, and nothing would come out.
And it's like, and it was just crazy and scary at the same time, because obviously, like, my voice was like something like I kind of need this. Yeah. And I had to have surgery, and I've actually had to have that surgery twice.
Whoa. I asked because I know when I got injured and when you're out of the kitchen, you immediately feel worthless.
Totally.
You immediately feel like,
totally,
wow, like all this could be dashed away quickly, and it makes you appreciate it more. And it works two ways. It helps you reflect during the time, and you kind of make these false promises to yourself when you're really in it. When you're like, I'm going to take more time off. Like, this is great. I have time to think. And then the other half of you, the chef part of you, is like, well, you got to fucking make this time up. You got to get in there and like you got to manage shit, and you know what I mean. So it's like your body even then is like still fighting itself. And sometimes I don't think that a 2-week vacation is enough.
No, it's really not.
You know,
it's not
to truly relax.
You know, it's like you have the bends still at that point. You haven't decompressed enough. Like, you're literally at that point, you're just starting to decompress. You haven't began to actually, like, you've just started to relax, right? Like, and like when we close, whenever we've closed even for like a week, to me that's like it means I'm gonna get 1 or 2 days off right in the middle. Yeah, because it's like takes 3 days to turn down, 3 or 4 days to rev up. Yeah, and then you're like, okay, I've got like a day or two. I've got a weekend in the middle of that, whatever that is. And if it's 2 weeks, you're like, okay, like I'm gonna get like maybe 4 or 5 days. You know, it takes 2 weeks to get like a weekend. You know,
3 days of time actual off. Rest. And even when you're working in the restaurant, you get home, you're not going to sleep.
You can't.
You're sleeping, but you know what I mean. You're jerking. You're waking up. You're checking your phone. You're
thinking about that stock you left on the
stove.
Exactly.
Is my restaurant going to burn down?
Did I place that order? It's hard to detune, and I think that's an important part of that I'm learning. You know, again, like every day and every week to try to do better, like for my own mental health and for the well-being of myself and my family, and like is to like, how do you decompress? How do you turn down, and how do you come back up in a healthy and mindful way where you're like, I'm not like an asshole to be around. I'm not a stress ball. Like, I'm not taking out my anxieties from X, Y, and Z on ABC. You know, and you know, it's a daily process. Like,
it really is.
Just trying to do that, but just being mindful that you do need that time, and whether you come home at 5 o'clock or whether you come home at 10 o'clock or 1 a.m., like you need some time to just decompress.
Slow down.
Let it slow down, right? It's like when you're working out and they tell you to do a wind down or a slow down. Like, you know, if you're running and they're like, okay, now just take a couple of laps or 2 minutes and just walk and like just decompress, right? Like just like...
And I feel like the nature of chefs is fight or flight, and we don't know how to decompress.
No.
It's like, ready, go!
What do you do when all
the
noise stops?
It's a boom, boom, boom. It's like a fucking banquet service every day for our minds and souls. And you just don't stop.
Totally. And you don't stop. And then when you do stop, you're sort of just waiting for it
to start up again.
Up again.
It's like a drug. Yeah. It really is.
And you have to get used to that. Like, how do I live in that space between and not be just waiting for it to be over?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's my time, you know, and I have to make the most of that.
You know, I see it sometimes. I see it all the time. I was at LL Bean yesterday. I was looking for turtlenecks out there. If anybody got any recommendations,
bringing them back.
I'm bringing them back, baby. You know, the turtleneck deserves respect. And then people are like, "Oh yeah, Steve Jobs." Like, fuck Steve Jobs, right? This is Shaft. All right, Shaft inspired this shit. Just so you know. So I look over at this guy, and he works there, and he's checking his watch constantly, and he doesn't have a smartwatch, so he's just looking at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I remember back to having those jobs that you're just looking at the time, ready to go, and that is what makes me appreciate all of the struggle and being in fight or flight all the time, and not sleeping. You know, it like justifies it all for me. Yeah. Like, I would rather fucking be this than be working somewhere where I'm looking at my watch being like, when do I get out of here? When am I free? You know, but I think that there is also a freedom in that, and being like,
there is.
Work is work and home is home.
There is.
And you don't mix it.
There is. And who's to say which is better? I know the younger me would be like, oh yeah, this is definitely better, right?
Yeah,
Because I have a purpose. I have a purpose. And then that guy's looking at you going, but you're also an asshole because
exactly.
What do you do for fun? How much time do you actually get to? Do you get to read? Do you get to
see your family?
Do you have days off? Do
yep.
you know? What's your health like? What's your sleep like?
Yep.
And you're like, yeah, and you realize it's not necessarily, again, like going back to what you were saying earlier, it's like about your opinions and your preconditions and your like of your perception, and like what's not right or wrong. It's just what is and what isn't, right? Like, and it's just they're just cause and effect. It's just action reaction, right? Like, but that doesn't make my action or my reaction or his action or reaction right or wrong. It's just there, and it's there for us to decide what version do we want, or what amalgamation of those things do we want to be our reality or our life or our perspective. And I think so many of us in this industry, especially now more than ever, are sharing, our frailties and our experiences in a way where we can talk about what we've idolized and lived the lifestyle and recreated what we thought we were supposed to do and how we were supposed to do this, and now we've been living with the I'm going to make $200 a week for 5 years before I have a chance to make like this, or I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to work 60 hours a week, or 80 hours a week, or 90 hours a week, or 100 hours a week, and when I reach 100 hours a week, I really made it. I'm really doing this, right? And then you're like, and then your health sucks, your life sucks, you've alienated yourself from your family, you don't even get invited to things anymore because people know you're not going to show up.
You're not going to show up, because I remember Christmas, I looked at it as the best day because nobody calls you. Like over the course of my career, I looked at it as a day where
I'm not going to be
I'm going to go to
sleep,
and I don't have to talk to anybody,
right?
Because my family, probably thinks I'm working, and my work people are off, so there's nothing going on. So sometimes I would find solace in Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's that's the only day where everything's kind of shut off.
Yeah, that's quiet and chill, and you're like, is that the way? Is that the right thing to be doing? Is it right to be like somebody to be like a to think about a career in our field as at the same arc as like professional sports or like high intensity military?
It really is,
right? Where you're like, you got a shelf life, man. You got a shelf life because you can't go at that pace
all the time,
forever. Right? Or you can't live that kind of life either physically, mentally, emotionally forever. Or if you can, then you're not going to have any of these other things be healthy or in balance as well. And we're really, I don't think that all of those things have been unknown, but I think we're in a place now where we can talk about it.
We can talk about it without being like,
without being questioned. without being demasculated or without feeling like a failure or without feeling like you're exposing, truths that you're supposed to live. And, and I think that's one of the really good things and beautiful things that's coming out of our more modern time. Do some people take it to the extreme? Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's important that we're able to share these things because I do enjoy this work, right? And I do want to do it for a while. I have other things I want to do also, but I don't want to grow to hate this. There's been times over the years where I've gotten out of bed and it's like I go to put my feet on the floor and they hurt, and it just like
fuck this today.
Yeah, just like I just.
And you have no fucking choice.
Want to do this today, and I'm like, God, you can't flip it like a light switch, but I don't want to be in this headspace. Like, this isn't healthy. Like, I need to stop doing this if that's where I'm gonna be. Like,
Exactly.
and I've certainly had that plateau a few times over the last